Hi, so my name's Emma. I graduated from UCLan in 2019 with a first in forensic science and criminal investigation. I started as a lab tech here last October. So I'm currently based in pharmacy, but I also look after foundation science courses. So this includes sort of liaising with teaching staff as to what they need for classes, preparing for them and setting up, sometimes helping students, as well as just generally looking after my assigned labs and looking after maintaining science equipment. So I received quite a bit of support really from UCLan's career service in getting to where I am now. So Andrea's just asked me to talk a little bit about me and my background, how careers has helped me and the things that I struggle with at work. So I'll start off with a bit about me. I have social anxiety and I struggle with depression. So things I find hard are the things you'll think of, like being around lots of people, talking in front of people, but also having to complete tasks in front of like my colleagues and putting forward new ideas with new people. I also worry a lot about what people think about me and the opinions people have of me, which can, they do affect my day-to-day life. So it's something I started to struggle with. Well, I've struggled with social anxiety my whole life, but it started to properly affect me when I was about college age. So I initially went to vet school when I left sixth form. So I took my A-levels in sciences, and then I went to Edinburgh Vet School. And I knew that I wasn't really ready, but I thought it'd be fine when I get there because everybody's nervous before they go, and I didn't really understand why I felt the way I did. I didn't really understand that it was social anxiety. And so I didn't really have any support when I went, and I didn't end up settling in, and I ended up leaving vet school. And I was leaving everything I ever wanted to be, really. And so when I left, I didn't really have that much of a plan about what I wanted to do. Being a vet's all I'd ever wanted, so I didn't really have any idea. I just knew that I didn't really want to go back to vet school because I knew that I would have to move away from home, and at the time there wasn't any vet schools near to home. We have one now here now typically, but they didn't at the time. So I knew I wanted to stay in education. So I just kind of went to lots of talks, visited lots of universities, and ended up settling on UCLan really because I could commute here. It had a really nice ethos, and it was leading in forensic science, which was what I found myself interested in. And so that's how I ended up on the forensic science path, really. And to be honest, I'd never really told anyone about the things that I struggled with. People knew that I'd gone to vet school, but I just used to say sort of that I didn't settle in. I didn't really tell anybody about really why I'd left. And it wasn't until sort of a friend said something to a lecturer about how much I was struggling that I actually ended up getting some support, which, even though I didn't want the extra help, ended up being the best thing that I could have done. And I actually found that lecturers were really supportive and non-judgmental, and they made adjustments where I needed them. So for example, if I had like a group exercise or a group presentation to do, I had the option to be able to do it on my own in an office with my lecturer to like get my individual mark. But even when I chose to stay with the group, it was just better knowing that they knew what I was struggling with, and so I didn't feel as much pressure if I made a mistake because they knew about that and they made adjustments for that. I also was put on to the mental health advisor at university, who helped me get some sort of support outside of UCLan. Unfortunately, it does take quite a long while. It wasn't really till 7 months after I'd left UCLan that I ended up getting any support, really. And then COVID happened, and then the next 2 years just disappeared off the face of the earth for everyone. So it was quite a tough 2 years after I left university. I didn't really do anything. I didn't get a job. It was really hard, and I felt a bit lost. But eventually, I felt started to feel a bit better. I got some support, and I started looking at jobs again. And I was lucky because I did keep in contact with some lecturers who helped me find those jobs initially. And so eventually a job came up at UCLan, and I thought, well, it's a good place to start. It's somewhere that I felt like safer, a bit more comfortable. So I thought it was a good place to start getting into having a job and having to cope with sort of working life every day. And so that sort of leads me to the support I got from UCLan Careers. So to be honest with you, I didn't really know how careers could help. I'd not actually really looked at the careers page. I'd been obviously to the sort of CV help and whilst I was a student, and I knew that they could check my application and that they could run mock interviews with me, but my interviews are like my biggest fear, as you might expect with social anxiety. So I thought, why would I put myself, through it more than I needed to? And it wasn't really, I was looking through the careers page and I saw that there was appointments with a specialist career advisor for people with, things that make transition into workplace more difficult. And so I booked an appointment with them just to see, what they could offer me. And we talked about sort of the support that I could receive, and they put me on to Andrea, who they thought would be a good fit for me. And so I had an initial appointment with Andrea, and we had a discussion about the things that I was finding difficult in getting a job, which for me was obviously interviews. And we had weekly meetings sort of to discuss interviews and should I get one. And we basically just worked through it at my own pace. There wasn't any pressure to have a mock interview. We just did what helped me. We sort of looked through my application, and then Andrea would come up with some questions which they might ask me in my interview, and then I would go away and I would think of some answers, and then the next session we'd sort of go through them. We'd talk about, perhaps how I could make them better, extra things I could include, things I could take out, how to word it a bit better. And so it was good because I was getting to practice answering those questions face to face with someone, but without that pressure of having a mock interview, which really frightened me. And it kind of just got me used to that interview environment, but really nice and slowly. So it wasn't just as much of a shock when I actually had an interview. And even when I did get an interview, we still met on Teams a couple of times. We had a few sessions in a week as a bit of extra support to talk about not just the questions again, but also to talk about things that I sort of find stressful about having an interview. So we'd plan my day, so getting up in the morning and getting myself into the right mindset for my interview, where to go, how long before to get there, just all things that would just make my day a little bit easier. And we also talked about sort of tips I could use during my interview, sort of like things to calm my nerves. We talked about questions I could ask at the end, because it's always worth asking some questions, and even if you know the answer to them, just ask a question because it looks better. You can just ask, what will my working day look like, or what training will I receive upon starting if I was to be successful? You might know the answer, but it looks better to ask. And we also talked about writing questions on a cue card, which I did for my interview. I just took a little cue card in with my questions that I got out of my pocket at the end of my interview, and it meant that I didn't have to worry about remembering my questions. And also, when I got my feedback from the interview, they actually said that it looked quite good because I'd already prepared and I looked serious about the interview. Another tip that me and Andrew kind of discussed about was something that I'd learned from my therapist, and that was to sort of to try and do some positive affirmations which sounds a bit naff, but you can try it, and it helped me. So it's just sort of, so when I was sat in the car before my interview, I just sort of closed my eyes and imagined the interview going how I wanted. I imagined going in, answering all the questions, being really nice and confident, smiling at the end, going out and getting that job that I wanted. And it just helped calm some of the nerves and sort of put myself in a more positive mindset, which helped. And then as for support, even after I got my job, Andrea was still there for support. She still is now. She still emails me just to check up on me and see how I'm getting on. And I know that she's always there if I'm having like problems. We also had a couple of meetings before I started just to sort of talk about the things that I was finding worrying about starting. Even just little things about, you know, what I was going to do on my first day, how I'd get through the doors because, you know, the swipe access only now, who to meet on my first day, just things like that would make my, you know, make settling in a bit easier. So yeah, I think maybe if I get a job elsewhere, if I move on from UCLan, and if I start working somewhere that's totally new, I would perhaps declare, because the extra support I've had really helped actually, and I wouldn't have the support in place already if I started somewhere new. Like here I had lecturers, you know, that I could go and see if I was struggling, but you know, if I started somewhere new, I won't have that. And I suppose it's better perhaps for people to know and to know what to expect from you, rather than thinking perhaps you're not doing your job properly or you're acting a bit differently to other people without understanding why. I mean, it's one of them. It's your choice. It just depends on how you feel and how much you're affected day to day by you know, your problems. That's sort of me. I hope that some of it's helped. Even if there's one person that feels the way I did, sometimes it feels like you're the only one who struggles, but it sometimes helps to know that other people do, and it doesn't mean you can't have a successful career. It just might take a bit longer, but you know, stick with it because you'll get there. So, you know, I wish you all the best in all of your careers, and thanks for listening.